Добре. Це піде в блуп. This will go into the bloopers. The aerial they're old.
Don't be careless. Your overconfidence is your weakness.
Hey there, Georgie here with Ukraine Matters. Welcome to Ukraine during a surprisingly air raid alert as we decided to start filming. We're now here in the suburbs of Kyiv, which is Bucha. I'm pretty sure one of you or many of you have actually heard about Bucha, and some of you that actually followed some of the Russian invasion really can remember this BMP monument that has been standing here. Russians have been firing at it and around it, and it was quite a famous scene from that time. Guys, I want to talk to you about the potential break in a war that can happen right now, because we are at a very interesting moment. In the last couple of days I was a little bit busy filming a lot of stuff with Ukrainian military men and getting a lot of insights that I'm going to be compiling in a movie, and it will be coming your way. But more importantly, we talked about the Starlink situation. If you haven't heard that basically Ukrainians approached Elon Musk and stated that Russians have been using Starlink quite aggressively lately, specifically putting them on the Shahed drones, flying them inside of Ukrainian territory and taking out the thermal and energy stations across Ukraine, which led to, well, you probably don't see it on the camera, but right now it's pretty dark out here in a lot of places because there is no energy in the houses. In Kyiv today, I believe the reports were that there was only about 1.5 to 2 hours of energy, which is super annoying, I got to tell you. But more importantly, it is really a terror tactic. It's a tactic that is aiming to demoralize Ukrainians. So I had the option to talk about the Starlink situation with the Ukrainian military and what they think about it. So here is what I can tell you about this. Firstly, it is a catastrophe for Russians. Starlink has been used quite actively by Russians for the last 2 years, despite the fact that it is now being turned off only now. If they have been using it quite actively on the front line before. If you remember, during the first days of invasions, it was Ukrainians that were able to intercept a lot of the communications of Russians because their radio systems were not that advanced. And only after Russians started finding a way to use Starlink and scale up that Starlink, they were then able to set up these mobile Wi-Fi connecting spots and allow them to use Discord for the radio connection, for the internet connection, video feed. They were able to use Telegram and signal chats to try to communicate between units and brigades. Before all of that command and control system just was not existing in the Russian forces, and they were basically reduced to a very, very poor Soviet-style communication via radios that are easily intercepted. If you also hear there is like some explosions on the side here, this is just either anti-air systems are working or some Shaheds that are being just shut down. It's sort of like an everyday occurrence, so I'm sorry, but I'm not reacting that much anymore. I think I've gotten used to while just being here. And the question was always like, how bad is it for Russia? Like, is actually turning off Starlinks is bad? And my answer to you is yes, it is bad. It is extremely terrible, and it can actually potentially really make a break point for the war. It hasn't made it for one specific reason that we're going to talk about in a second, but it's definitely terrible. Russia have built all of their modern communication systems on the availability of Starlinks. The fact that Ukrainians now provided sort of like a second factor authentication where the Starlinks need to be whitelisted before they can be used in the territory of Ukraine, this is now going to be a big problem for Russia. More than that, already we have reports that some of the Ukrainian traitors are trying to whitelist those Starlinks and sell them to Russians, to which Ukrainians already stated this is actually super easy scheme to find and it's not an issue at all, and we're going to just find anyone that did this and we're going to find and get them out of Ukraine. Russian Starlink systems have been now quiet for some times, and Russian Telegram channels, all of these propaganda media, they have been crying non-stop. that they basically want to find Elon Musk and do a lot of nasty things to him, that he is a Ukrainian sellout. They want to do a lot of things with their commanders, and this is a problem because of the moment we're finding ourselves in the war at. Russia and Ukraine has been doing the extended exhaustion warfare for a while. There has been a lot of tension on both sides. Yes, Ukraine has been struggling to control the Russian advances, but Russians were doing way above what they should have been able to be honest, just because they were sacrificing a lot of manpower and they were still trying to advance. But all of that is supplemented by a lot of command and control networks, specifically for the drones and other things. And all of those networks over the last years have been built on Starlink. Ukraine has been growing in power ever since day one. Ukraine has been finding new contracts, new abilities to produce stuff, and Ukraine just was lacking that one edge over Russians, so they kind of go over some kind of a possibility to overcome the Russian advances. And we saw that slowly and slowly Ukrainians were getting there, right? You know, Ukrainians grew the distant attack capabilities. They started putting pressure on the Russian economy, increasing the costs for Ukrainian anti-Russian drone brigades have been doing quite well. The Russians' losses have been going up all the last year. And there was like this one last moment that would kind of stop Russians to be able to do stuff in Ukraine. One of those specifically is the new tactics that Russians are using. Remember, they cannot use their tactics on BMPs driving forward anymore because drones are seeing everything, they're destroying everything. So what instead Russians are doing is they are literally just taking a couple of men, and these men would usually put some kind of a thermal cloaks just so they're not seen by the thermal vision drones at night, and they would try to infiltrate Ukrainian positions, walk between the Ukrainian ranks and kind of get behind the Ukrainian enemy lines, accumulate there and sort of take over that territory. What is not known part of this whole equation is that it is crucial that this is all monitored by drones, and this is all monitored by drones because of the Starlink. Starlink was the quintessential point for this whole Russian tactic of infiltration to be working. It is, I mean, it doesn't mean that it still cannot happen, it still can, but the efficiency of it just diminishes incredibly. It stops being a system and it starts becoming just a gimmick sort of on Russian forces, which gonna put a lot of pressure on the whole Russian system. Removing Starlink from the Russian operations right now is a systematic problem for Russia. Russia, that was already at this sort of a breaking point with Ukraine, where Ukrainians have been gaining a lot of muscle, and despite having some issues internally with bleeding manpower and everything, Ukraine was still resisting a lot of the Russian offensives, and Russia was not able to achieve even a single goal over the last any year in Ukraine, to be honest. And now we saw that even with clear days right now, even with clear skies, they were not able to achieve the progress of advances that they had, for example, during summer. And Ukrainians know that. And you might ask, well, that means that Ukrainians should have it easy, right? They have Starlink, Russians don't. So therefore there should be a full-blown advantage. And you're kind of right, but half right. Because the truth of the matter is, and this is something that people don't tell you, is that Ukrainians have issues activating their Starlinks as well. So while in a longer term it is going to be this massive advantage for Ukraine with the Starlinks turned off, right now it is still not. A lot of the Ukrainian Starlinks, some of the military that we talked to estimate it could be anywhere from 50 to 70% of Starlinks that are being activated. Ukraine is weirdly digitalized society. Like some places it is extremely digitalized, which you are getting super impressed. In other places they're still having paper journals to fill in, and journals for journals that they need to fill in. So a lot of these logins for Starlinks that Ukrainians need to whitelist, they have been submitted as messages, SMS, and they've been put in these folders with some write-ups, and now there is a whole group of people that are trying to one by one whitelist these Starlinks into the system. It is taking some time. It's been already a little bit of time since Starlinks have been turned on, but I still get reports from the guys at the front line that it is still causing an issue, and they need to basically jump in between Starlinks to try to get things operational right now. So it screwed the Ukrainian military as well. That is why you didn't see the immediate impact on the front line. But I do feel that this is a major thing that's going to change. And you know what's ironic here the most, kind of wrap this whole thing up? Because Starlink, the whole idea of Starlink is free access of information, right? It is the ability to access internet sort of from any place in the world. I'm talking generally here. But in Russia, Russians cannot use Starlink. It is prohibited because Putin is incredibly afraid of any kind of communication in between Russian society. That is why they are banning the messenger systems, and they're introducing just one right messenger that is developed by the Russian government. That is why Starlink is prohibited in Russia. That is why they're trying to control the media and narratives. So it is so ironic that despite all of this, the only system that whole Russia was able to introduce was the system that was, I can say, like, philosophically designed by free societies for free societies, without going to implications about Elon Musk and everything. So I mean, this just shows what Russia is and how incapable it is. And I think the biggest kind of like the cherry on top is just because you remember how Russia was putting themselves as we are the space race, space-able superpower. It's funny that it is the space technology that Russia is just not able to recreate is what is causing it to now, in this unforeseen events, to be its absolute weakness. So my hopes are that in coming weeks we will see big problems for the Russians, we will see more radio interceptions by Ukrainians, and we will see Ukrainians doing better and better and better. Guys, I will do more videos now that I've done a lot of my secret stuff, so to say. It's not secret, I'll just release it later, but a lot more coming your way. Stay here with me from Ukraine. I'm Georgie. Love you, Slava Ukraini, and I'll see you next time.